Wish you could have been a Jet, Fernando.
Let's see what happens.
Live from Radio Row in Indianapolis, it's Combine time. As teams look for their next superstar. Some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment will be right here. Get ready for the 2026 draft, baby. It's the Jake Asman Show.
Live from Indianapolis, we're joined by a big-time guest right now, one of the most popular analysts out there when it comes to the NFL, college football, and, of course, his bread and butter, the NFL draft. It's our guy, Connor Rogers. What's up, Connor?
I'm chilling, man. What's going on? You know this is my favorite event of the year.
I mean, look, you made it to your favorite event of the year.
Yes.
Break down how many cancellations you had before you finally made it out here.
It was sweaty. I think about 3 or 4 cancellations, like 7 different bookings of just trying stuff. And Tuesday, shout out to LaGuardia, man. It was clear, ready to roll. No problems Tuesday night here. Had about at least 12 to 14 player interviews today. It's such a good class. Going to have almost 50 this year. So didn't want to miss the D-line day on Wednesday. I got to talk to Ruben Bain, all the top talents up front. So I'm happy to be here, man.
I'm glad you made it. We will pick your mind certainly on the draft. But I just want to start with some of the comments from Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji when they spoke earlier this week. What were your biggest takeaways from each? We could start with the head coach.
Well, I think number one, the rumors and the noise around how the coaching staff came together, and Glenn being very vocal about how, he feels like play calling is a superpower was the word he said. And, it kind of opened the door to me. There's a couple ways to look at it. One, it's good to see him being adamant about calling plays because we've felt for a long time that Aaron Glenn should be calling this defense. But number two, if you felt that way, why didn't you do that year one? And if the honest answer is I wanted to kind of settle into becoming a head coach and didn't want to put even more on my plate. So I found that pretty interesting. I thought with Muji specifically just, being adamant, like, hey, Breece Hall basically isn't going anywhere is kind of the vibe it felt like. And that's good because the process of not trading him, but then letting him walk for nothing would have been really, really difficult. So it seems like they've had a plan in place for a long time that, hey, if we didn't get the 3rd round pick at the deadline, and they didn't, the rumor was Kansas City was offering a 4th, we're going to keep this guy. And Breece Hall is probably going to be transition tagged or franchise tagged unless they get a deal done. And that to me just always applied the most logic, because why do you want to create more needs on a team that has a lot of needs right now? Which kind of brings us to the AVT conversation. Before we recorded and sat down, you said to me, you're like, I don't know. And, that's one where I would try to bridge that gap, because I wouldn't want to go into this draft needing an offensive lineman for what feels like every year. It was great to see continuity with them having it last year, even with AVT hurt. If you can get him back into the fold, I think he's their best run blocker on tape. And if you add him to that offensive line where you already have Membu, who was phenomenal, Tittman took a huge step last year, Olu was really, really solid. It's nice going in having an established offensive line than feeling like we need to draft and plug holes, unless they have a bigger plan in free agency. But not a lot of great offensive linemen make it a free agency.
The big thing with AVT that I can't seem to figure out, and I've tried to talk to some people here who might know, and I've been asked by people with other teams, hey, like, what's the deal with AVT? Are the Jets going to keep him? No one can figure out what his market is. Like, what do you give a guy who, when he plays, is awesome, but like, again, what type of contract is that worth in free agency?
So maybe that answers our question of why this isn't done yet. Maybe he doesn't really have a good feel for his market, and the Jets don't really have a feel, where the market is dictated by everybody else around it. Now, the risk you run with that, of course, is, not to bring it to the Mets, but like the Mets did that with Edwin Diaz in baseball, and you find out the hard way, there is a team out there willing to pay. If you're the Jets, you don't want to be like, oh, we didn't know a team had a 2-year, $33 million deal lined up for AVT that he took because he'd rather go be there, and now we're out of luck. But maybe if they play this right, they have a good communication with the agent and say, go see what's out there. This is where we stand. If you find that deal, we're willing to – I don't think the Jets are in a position where they match and get the guy. I think they need to exceed offers. So maybe that'll help them kind of close that gap there. But you're right. I've seen articles from very smart people that have a handle on the cap that he could be a 1-year sub-$8 million deal. That's nothing in the NFL. And then some people like myself believe he might get a 2-year – $28 million deal. The guard market is very, very inflated right now. So it's hard to get a read on AVT, and maybe both sides need to kind of see what's out there to figure out, what the landing price is.
And it just feels like in terms of AVT, if you could build a contract that'd be based on like playing time, incentives would be a no-brainer. But to your point, all it takes is that one team that's willing to what we would consider an overpay, and he's gone. And then what do you do if you're the Jets?
Right. And the problem is you just always worry about if he reaches his potential somewhere else. And the thing with AVT that does make him easier to project is we're not wondering if he's going to be a good player. We know he's a good player. We've seen him be a really, really good player multiple seasons. The thing you're trying to figure out is he going to be a player that we can rely on? And you need to figure out what's bad luck and what's a pattern with ABT. Are these injuries a pattern, or is he run into bad luck? I actually think he's had more bad luck than it being a pattern. And I think that's why if I was the Jets, I would make sure he's back.
All right. With Aaron Glenn, he said yesterday, the play calling is a superpower. What exactly does a Glenn defense in your eyes look like? And how does that now influence the decisions in free agency? And of course, maybe the biggest decision they make this offseason, the pick at number 2 overall.
Well, the one big hint we've had, I think, is bringing Carl Dunbar back to coach the defensive line, who has coached 3-4 fronts throughout a long period of time. Maybe they're going to get away from a base 4-3 and play more of a base 3-4. And then how did they evaluate their personnel with that? And how did they transition that to the 2nd overall pick? Now, there's a couple different ways of looking at this, right? Say they do play more of a 3-4 front. Well, you like Harrison Phillips and Juwan Briggs fit. I think Will McDonald would be fine standing up. He's just a dynamic athlete. It might actually aid him. Jermaine Johnson's a hard guy to figure out right now. And the clock on paying Jermaine Johnson is a lot tighter now than it is on Will McDonald, which is another layer to this. You look at the draft, Arvel Reese, it's a matter of how you view him. Do you want him to be a 3-4 outside linebacker standing up? Do you want him playing off the ball as a middle linebacker? I think there's a world where he could honestly do both. It's just a matter of how you project him. David Bailey is a guy. He could play in a 3-4 and just let him attack off the edge. And then Reuben Bain's kind of an interesting one because I like him as a 4-3 end or a 3-4 hand in the dirt end, but I don't know if you're taking that at the 2nd overall pick. That's an interesting question to ask yourself. So schematically, Glenn is a guy that values man coverage with the corners. It feels like there's been hints that they're going to move towards playing a lot more 3-4, and now they got to match the personnel to do that. They have a lot of money and a lot of draft picks to do that. And honestly, I think Dunbar is one of the better assistant coaches they have on the roster right now.
You look at just kind of where this team is at. You have the 4 picks in the top 44. You have all this money. Is there a path for this team to be a lot better than many Jet fans are expecting? Like, this is the time of year where in the past we win the offseason, we all get excited. I've never seen the fan base like this. I told you this a few weeks ago when we chatted in San Fran. Like what type of moves could be made, and let's say free agency and then into the draft to kind of just provide some sort of energy into this fan base again?
Well, one, just looking so much better on paper, and you're going to have the chance to do that through the draft. But what do you do in free agency, like you said?
Like Alex Anzalone is a nice player, but that's not going to get people excited. We've been talking about him for a year already.
No, and you're talking about somebody entering their mid-30s, and that's a tough swing. I mean, you got to go out and get a real safety for this defense. I don't know if that's, Cam Curl would be at the top of my list from the Rams. And I think a guy that tests the market. You look at Brisker from the Bears. You got to go out and get a top flight safety. I'm fascinated if they tap into the linebacker market. Like, do you go and look at a Leo Chanel kind of guy? You brought up Anzalone. Are you going to play in a higher tier of the offensive free agent market? Obviously, bringing Brees back would close the door on exploring the running back market. But what does the market look like for you at offensive playmaker? Does Alec Pierce make it a free agency? I don't think George Pickens will, but do you kind of dive into that landscape as well to pay a receiver big time money? So the bottom line is they need to build the roster as much as they can so they don't go into the draft with all of these needs and then they become desperate, because we saw that bite Joe Douglas a couple times throughout his regime. We've seen him bite a lot of Jets GMs, kind of in the butt over the years. And then, the big thing is figuring out the quarterback situation, and nobody really has the grasp on what the solution is. I don't think it's going to be a splashy move what they make at quarterback ultimately, which is going to be really interesting. But yeah, I think the bottom line is to get the buy-in from the fan base. The one way to do that is to truly build a defense that keeps you in games. And they have the ability to do that. I thought the defense was a giant disappointment last year, but with all the draft capital, it's a good draft for defense in the front 7 specifically, all the defensive talent in free agency. If you could build a team that is a stout defense, can run the ball, and you get mediocre quarterback play from one of these bridge options, that would be a stark difference of what we watched last year.
So I talked to someone with the Jets earlier today, and we were talking about quarterback, and I basically said, like, what would you do? What would you want?
Right.
And he goes, competent quarterback play. I go, we've been having this conversation for what feels like 20-something years. My whole life as a Jet fan, outside of like a couple of years of Pennington and the Sanchez years.
The
and
weird Fitz year.
Like, it's just that the competent quarterback play.
I put McCown in that bucket, which is kind of funny.
They were 5-8 before he suffered that season-ending injury with him. But you just look at the offense, right? good offensive line on paper. Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor in year 2, A.D. Mitchell, full offseason with the team.
Right.
You could add a receiver. They're not bereft of talent. Brees is going to be here. It's just who's the quarterback, right? And like what are the options? I know you and Joe Caporoso on Badlands have talked about 30, 40 different options because you could legitimately just throw a name out there and be like, yeah, maybe he could be in the quarterback room with so and so. It's just I don't know what the ideal scenario should be if you're the Jets trying to figure out the position.
Well, I would make a play for Malik Willis. And I know that's not popular because there's this weird narrative that you just did that with Justin Fields. No, you didn't. Malik Willis is 10 times the thrower of the football than Justin Fields was. So that's the day. Now, if you want to talk about the potential injury risk there, that I would understand. But that would be my first play.
What does a contract for Willis look like?
I think he gets $28 to $30 million a year over 3 years. I think we're talking big-time money. I think the low bar would be $375. So
wow.
3 years, $75 million.
I believe it because Justin Fields got $30 million guaranteed, $40 million over 2.
Right. So why wouldn't Malik Willis, his higher moments have been way better than Justin Fields' highest moments? So because there's not a lot of solutions, Jake. Like people are like, "Oh, don't sign Malik." Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go into the Tua and Kyler Murray bracket?
Because I trade for Andy Dalton.
And what does that do for you? I mean, what is Andy Dalton right now at this stage of his career? So.
What is their goal for this upcoming season?
What is
because that's
the
the thing. Like, are they in? We need to save our jobs, so we need to try and take a big swing to get a quarterback, or are we just going to build the roster? We'll see how many games we end up winning, and then we have 3 1s in 27, and we have a chance to get our quarterback. Then that's why I tried to word a question to Muji yesterday about that, and he's like, "Look, we're really excited about our picks in 27, but we got a lot of picks this year to do things. Turn it around this year.
You want to make sure you do enough to make those picks in 2027. You don't want some other guy getting to make those picks while you're fired on the outside the facility. So it's pretty tricky. To me, there's a bucket of backups that are under contract that I would call to find out what the trade cost is for if available. Jameis Winston is at the top of that list.
Yep.
Now, with the injuries Jackson Dart had last year, it's a little difficult to envision the Giants just offloading Jameis Winston.
Unless you overpay, right?
You have to call. You have to see what the Niners' asking price is for Mac Jones. You have to, like Tanner McKee is a name that's been thrown out there.
Can you explain to me where that comes from? He's 6'6". He was a 6th-round pick. Like, he's played in the preseason. His one regular season start I watched this year because everyone was saying Tanner McKee. I wasn't very impressed. I don't understand where the hype for McKee is coming from.
Yeah, I think the people love the unknown, right? That's really what it is. And to be fair, Malik Willis, we love the unknown about him because he's played a couple games, and when he's had to fill in Green Bay, he's looked awesome. But, the question is, what is it going to look like over a full sample size? Now, with Tanner McKee, you don't even have those few games. You're just looking at preseason development. So that's why I would go with guys that give you a floor at quarterback. And that's why I start with the Jameis Winstons of the world and the Mac Jones of the world. And once again, this isn't pretty, but, number one, you're not trading for Kyler because you're not taking on that contract. You're not. That's ridiculous. Same with Tua. Why would you help out the Dolphins for a mess they made for a guy that is horrific in cold weather? Where do you play? I mean, come on. Like, you play in northern New Jersey where it's brutal in the winter. So the options are pretty limited. And then you get to the draft and you go, well, what if they fall in love with Ty Simpson? Well, what if other teams fall in love with Ty Simpson? Is it guaranteed to be there at 16? Should you take him at 16? Do you have a good enough roster for him to thrive? So the perfect world was, hey, can we get Ty Simpson at 33 and use the 2 picks in front of him to kind of build out this roster? That was an interesting scenario to me. I'm curious if by the time we leave Indy, that's not on the table. That Ty Simpson's just locked into the first round. So I don't envy them. But I will say this is partially the bed they made because the first try the first swing they took with Fields blew up in their face. So now then year 2, they're in desperation mode where everybody loves what year 3 is going to look like with that draft. And, is Arch going to be in that draft? What is Lenore Sellers going to look like? And CJ Carr, all these names we could do all day. But they got to get there, and they got to figure out something to get them there right now.
And what's crazy is even if you wanted, let's say, Jameis Winston, I think he'd be a great fit. What if the Giants are like, you're desperate. You don't have a 3rd-round pick. We want pick 44.
Yeah,
am I trading a 2nd-round pick for a 1-year bridge of Jameis Winston? You can't do it.
No, you're not doing it.
Same with Mac Jones. I don't know if I trade a 2nd for him.
I wouldn't. No, his price seems to be like squarely in that 3rd-round kind of range.
Which, thanks to Joe Douglas, we don't have a 3rd-round pick.
Right, and that Hassan Reddick trade is really kind of eating at them right now. So, man, there's a lot there, and there's no easy solution at quarterback, which falls back on my whole argument that they need to build the team to be able to run the football and play defense. And they thought they were going to do that last year. The defense was awful. The run game didn't stand. The run game was okay, but they didn't stand a chance because they were so predictable.
Right.
You run the ball when it's a close game or you're in the lead. And the fact is, the Jets were playing in scripts that were so pass heavy because the defense was so bad that they were down multiple touchdowns early on that they weren't really able to thrive in the run game. So I think that's the problem, is they're trying to find a floor at quarterback, but we don't know what that market looks like right now.
Connor Rogers is our guest. Hit the like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Connor, of course, on NBC. You watch him all the time there. You watch him on SNY, Jets pre and post. And, of course, Badlands. Him and Joe Caparoso doing an amazing job talking all things Jets multiple times a week on their feed on Patreon. Let's talk specifically now about the draft. It's always tough to project when we haven't had free agency and whatnot, but as we sit here right now with the 4 picks in the top 44, what's the ideal scenario for the Jets? If it goes the way they want it to go, outside of the miracle Fernando Mendoza doesn't go 1, what's like a realistic path to you feeling really good about the players they selected with their 4 picks in the top 44?
Get a blue chip front 7 player with that 2nd overall pick and figure out schematically what you're going to be. If that's Arvel Reese, okay, that's Arvel Reese. If that's David Bailey, because you just believe in the pass rush ability, that's an avenue I've admittedly spoken out about. And I think I have this reputation now is like, you got to take David Bailey at 2. It's like, let's pump the brakes. I really like David Bailey
when you
at
mock
2.
someone, though, people pay attention.
Right. David Bailey and Arvel Reese just make so much sense for this team. There's a lot to like about Ruben Bain. I think Ruben Bain is
Trevor told me, your co-host on Stock Exchange, he says he would take either Bain or even Kayla Downs at 2.
I mean, Downs is an amazing player. It's hard to argue against amazing players. I don't think they're going to take a safety at 2, but, crazier things have happened. And then, so say you get that blue chip front 7 player at 2. Let's just say they take Reese or Bailey. At 16, do one of the big 3 wide receivers make it? Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson. Do one of them make it? If one of them do, depending what you think of Tyson's medicals, any of those 3 significantly help your football team. Now, if they don't bring back AVT, and I know Daniel Jeremiah had this in his mock, and it's something on the Badlands mock we talked about, me, Meeks, and Dan, is like, if you have a hole in the offensive line, that 16 is going to be a hotbed for offensive linemen. Vega Owane from Penn State, who's a true guard. Do you even look at Caden Proctor from Alabama, who played tackle, and go, you're going to be guard for us, big fellow. Like, you're 360 pounds. We're going to kind of limit some of your issues at tackle, put you at guard where you can drive people off the ball. All kinds of different players like that. I think Mauingoa and Spencer Fano would be gone in that scenario. But once again, to me, the dream would be a blue chip front 7 player at 2. We'll say Reese or Bailey. One of the big 3 wide receivers making it to 16. At 33, I need a big fella up front. I need Caden McDonald from Ohio State, Christian Miller from Georgia. One of these big defensive linemen that makes us a tougher football team that you can't run on us. And we're going to be able to kind of go out there and bully you around. Because if you give me a front, once again, and say they were going to play Reese on the edge, if you have a front that's Bailey or Reese with, say, Caden McDonald or Christian Miller, Harrison Phillips, Jawan Briggs, and Will McDonald, we're starting to cook with gas a little bit up here up front. We can get after the quarterback. We can stop the run. So that would be a fascinating scenario for me at 33. That's kind of a spot I really like. 44, what do they do in free agency? If you don't get a safety and you need a safety, you're going to be looking at safety at 44. Is that going to be an A.J. Halsey from LSU? Does Dylan Thieneman from Oregon make it down there? I don't know if he will. Kamari Ramsey. There's a lot of different names at safety that might help you out at that spot as well. You got to be careful drafting for need. At 44, you'd obviously like to just take the best player available and see kind of how the chips fall. It's a really good off-ball linebacker draft, depending on how – say they take Bailey at 2, and they're not active in free agency at off-ball linebacker. Does Jake Golday or Josiah Trotter make it to you at 44 at off-ball linebacker? I had both those guys over with me today at the NBC set. I mean, they're real. Trotter, the last name speaks for itself because we've seen his dad and his brother play it, obviously at the NFL level. With Jake Golday, 6'4", 240, played, some slot, basically, like this overhang kind of position, played inside linebacker. He's big, he can run, he's tough. So I'm all about making this defense bigger and faster. And I think that Saleh built the right defense, but he didn't build the right defense for Aaron Glenn. And the transition period has been pretty stark and tough to watch. And I think Glenn wrongly overestimated the talent that he had. And now they got to get that right.
And I think you could also argue he overestimated his ability to quote him coach guys up that were currently here.
Yeah,
no one improved.
Right, and fit them in, and you're not calling plays, so it's now up to Wilkes to kind of max it. It felt like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And this year, it just accept what you are, pick an identity, and lean into it in free agency and the draft. I think that's something that Detroit was very good at when Glenn was there, and the Jets need to find that.
You mentioned Arvel Reese. I'm fascinated about what he could be because I've heard people compare him to Micah Parsons. I've heard people say, no, he's just way better as an off-ball linebacker. That's where I'd play him. When I hear people say that, I go, well, can you take that guy second overall? What is your eval of our Arvel Reese? And if the Jets took him, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think right now he's best at playing off the ball, and it's a high level for a 20-year-old. Let's not get that mixed up. Like, he can run through blockers. He's got speed. He could play in space. There's glimpses of him being able to play on the edge. Now, when you're a 20-year-old and you're, we'll say, 245 pounds, I don't know if his measurements came in here today while we've been doing this, but the bottom line is it's going to be a big fella by the time he's 21, 22, where can you start to develop under the edge? Micah Parsons, that's a little rich for my blood. I thought there were more signs when I evaluated Micah, who was my top defender in that draft that year. And it was weird, right? Because we didn't get to see him the last year, and he was playing off ball. But when you watched him rush the passer, you were like, this is real right now. With Reese, there's glimpses of it, but I don't know if he's going to be a full-time pass rusher. And then it brings up the point you said. Is that guy worth taking it to? And that's where the combo starts to kind of creep in of taking him or Bailey. And I think it's an interesting one. And that's why I've leaned towards Bailey, because you have to project. Reese is a tricky one because I think he's a great player. And I think he is a player that could do a lot of different things for you. But if you need somebody that can truly play on the edge of your defense and sack the quarterback, I'm pretty confident David Bailey and Ruben Bain are going to do that. I don't know if Arvel Reese is going to do that yet. I know he's going to be great off the ball. I know he's going to be great against the run, and he's a great athlete. But consistently rushing the passer, he can set a hard edge. He's got big hands. He gets under defenders. So it just requires a little bit more creativity and projection.
You mentioned Jordan Tyson earlier in this conversation. He's not doing anything here in Indy. He's not working out. He's still nursing his hamstring injury that
it's tough.
He suffered months ago. How does that impact his draft stock? Could he actually fall to 16? Is there a path where he actually falls even lower than that? And the Jets at 33 could either move back into round one or just maybe he falls out of round one altogether. I'm not sure. Your thoughts on his draft status at this point?
There's a real world where he falls to 16 because of that, because availability matters a lot. Now, Jordan Tyson, I think, has the best film of any wide receiver in this draft. So how do you match that up?
Would you take him at 16?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And now, these are always easy things to say here doing media at the combine without having medical information. Now, the people that I know that have been close to this have felt more optimistic about his medicals, but you need to be careful with, how you kind of take that and run with it. Now, what's a pattern and what's bad luck? I think he's had a knee tear a couple years ago. That was bad luck. Guys, they tear up their knees all the time now. It's just the nature of the sport. I believe he had a broken collarbone at one point. It's bad luck, right? And now, he's gotten a lot bigger, too. So maybe it was a product of him being a little slender at the time. He's filled out a lot. Now, soft tissue, that can be a pattern. And when you hear hamstring, you're like, okay, is this a pattern or is this bad luck? I can't sit here and tell you this is just bad luck because I've seen soft tissue injuries keep guys off the field way too much. So I think he's beyond talented. He's talented enough to take it with a top 8 pick. Forget top 16. Now, if you get the discount at 16 because of the injuries, if you're the Jets, that might be a risk you have to take. Because him and Garrett Wilson, man, if you got this thing to mediocrity this year, and then you had a young quarterback with a lot of talent from the 2027 draft, throwing to Garrett Wilson and Jordan Tyson and Adonai Mitchell, you might really have something there.
Ty Simpson, if he somehow is there at 33, are you taking him? So you're comfortable at 33. What is the scenario where you'd be good with taking Simpson? Do you have a round one grade on him? Like if he, let's say at 16, they don't take him, but he's still there. He's starting to slide. And maybe the Jets wanted to guarantee they got him so they can get the 5th-year option on him as well. Like at what point would you be comfortable actually making the move and drafting Ty Simpson?
Yeah, 33 is obviously an ideal scenario for me. And for me, that's how I grade quarterbacks does not often align with how they go. I don't just throw out first-round grades on quarterbacks like candy. I mean, for perspective, like Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, not first-round quarterbacks for me. Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, I like things about them. Not first-round quarterbacks for me. Cam Ward was a first-round quarterback for me. Shedeur Sanders was not a first-round quarterback for me. And at the time, there was a lot of people that thought he was. So I look at this and go, I don't think Ty Simpson will have a first-round grade from me. But if he has a second-round grade, that's worthy for a lot of teams of taking in the first round. Now, he needs to get healthy, and it sounds like he is now. I know he played hurt down the stretch last year. There's still some things you want to see from him with accuracy. Like his mechanics kind of fell apart when he was hurt at the end of last year. And, you just look at it and go, where was the guy that we watched in September and October that looked so locked in? I don't think he's the biggest guy in the world. And as when you're an injured quarterback and you're not the biggest quarterback, like that counts against you. It doesn't count as bad luck. You're going to get hit a lot in the NFL and you're going to get hurt. So I like Ty Simpson a lot from the aspect of taking a developmental guy. When you're the Jets, taking a guy at 16 is not a developmental situation all the time. That guy is going to be expected to play at some point, and there's going to be a lot of pressure. And the regime, his success or lack thereof, will probably dictate the regime's future. So perception is everything, right? Where you look at it and go, if I take Ty Simpson at 33, it seems crazy, but it feels like more of a dart throw, doesn't it? When you take him at 16, you better be right.
100%.
Because that could set you back. The 16th pick in the draft needs to help the New York Jets for a long time.
Well, what's
right
crazy
now.
to me, Connor, is when people say, well, you have the 3 1s and 27, so, you either have a quarterback or you don't have a quarterback. Just take one at 16.
No,
if it doesn't work out, you try again next year. Top 16 pick is a big-time pick. You could find a legitimate stud in that spot. I'm not just, just take Ty. It's a dart throw. Not at number 16.
You can't operate that way. Number one, it'll get you fired. And then the second thing is, too, your roster's not good enough, right? Because, you look at the Rams are in a fascinating spot for this. The Rams at 13. The Rams are good enough where they could take Ty Simpson at 13 and kind of put him in the corner, and everybody forgets about him until he has to play. And nobody will kill the Rams for that because it's it's kind of almost like a lotto ticket in their scenario. Now, I think the Rams ultimately will probably just kind of keep pushing all their chips in and win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. But the point stands, right? So then you look at it from that perspective where the Jets, the roster's not good enough. You have such a ways to go that, man, the 2nd overall pick, the 16th overall pick, the 33rd overall pick, and the 44th overall pick are probably starting for the New York Jets this year, if not week 1 by October. The 2nd overall pick and the 16th overall pick, absolutely. So can you afford that, right? And that kind of goes back to our free agency discussion as well. So there's a lot of variables this time of year, but it's going to be really interesting because, I look back at last year, when Joe Shane drafted Jackson Dart, he kind of looked at Brian Dable and said, we're going to roll the dice and this is your guy. The Jets either got to be sure about a guy or they're just going to keep kicking that can down the road. And I think we'll know what they think of a Ty Simpson caliber player by what they do in the pro market. If they get a guy that throw any name out there, like Tanner McKee, right? Or even Kirk Cousins,
Marcus Mariota.
You're probably going to be aggressive for Ty Simpson, right? Because you need to sell some kind of hope at the quarterback position. But if they go a more flashier road, then it's okay, no, this is the guy that's going to start for us, and we're kind of punting on this draft.
It's going to be fascinating. One last draft question for you, because you were the first, I think, all over this, and I know Jet fans were giving you crap. Oh, how could you be so critical? First-year GM, you don't know how it's going to work out. But you were the first that was critical of the Arian Smith pick and some of the other day 3 picks they made. And while I think Muji has done overall a decent job to this point, they lit day 3 picks on fire last year. Have you heard anything about their process and if it's going to be any different this go around now that Muji's had a full year to reflect back on what happened there?
It's something I definitely want to dive into this week when I see people. Unfortunately, with the weather delays, I didn't get to Glenn and Muji's presser here Tuesday because I got in Tuesday night. Now, to be honest with you, they probably wouldn't have given me a crazy answer anyway, and I understand that. You want to keep things close to the vest with the draft. But it felt like they were just in over their heads on consensus at day 3 of the draft last year. It's one thing to take a guy in the 4th round that maybe you saw as a 5th or 6th rounder. It's another to take a 4th rounder that a guy that maybe wasn't going to get drafted, right? And Barron was the same. They traded a 5th round pick to go up and get there. So you kind of hope that process levels out. Are you on the same page as some of your scouts? Who has control of the room? I know Glenn has a lot of influence on the draft. Was that a scenario where Glenn had a good feel at the top of the draft, and they got Membu and Mason Taylor and Azaria Thomas, but then day 3 opened up. Well, now we got to delegate some of this to our area scout here or our analytics department here. And I'm not taking the blame off Muji and Glenn because you're in charge. You're allocating in those responsibilities. So they need to really improve in that area, and I hope they do this year because this team needs to find a day 3 gem at some point, man. It can change a draft class for you.
100%. Tell us about the Badlands live event that's coming. I'm looking forward to being at it once again.
Yeah, so I need to make sure I have the exact date right here. We're going to be out and about doing a pre-draft event, I believe, on April 11th. That is a Saturday. I believe our preseason event was at Stout. I believe this one's going to be at Stout again. You know what? It gets crazy at the pre-draft live event. It's a big party. Everybody's going to be hanging out. We'll do a little Q&A, but a lot of giveaways and partying and really just kind of getting everybody hyped up for the draft. The whole Badlands crew will be there. You're always there, Jake, which we love having you there. a lot of Jets content creators, beat writers, some special guests. So we're super pumped for it, man.
What was it like to be watching Get Up and hear Peter Schrager shout out Joe Caporoso, Connor Rogers, and the Badland guys?
Yeah, Peter's a friend of the show and a really, really good guy. So we really appreciated that from him. It's, it's nice when people in this industry give you a little love like that. And he knows how crazy Jets fans are about the draft. And he was kind of ribbing into Mel, like, you take a safety at 2, be ready to hear it from these people. It's going to start some crazy discourse. But it's cool when your little, mom and pop shop brand kind of makes it on that kind of platform. It gives you a smile. And Schrager's a great dude.
One day, if the Jets forget, a Super Bowl, just, the playoff drought ends 9-8, get in the wild card round. It's going to feel like a championship given what this fan base continues to go through. And just, we all want the same thing. And it kills me that, here we are talking about a playoff drought that is 15 years and counting right now.
It's crazy. And, since I've been doing Jets pre and post, this was my 4th season. The first season, they started out 7-4, I believe, that I did
6-3 and then 7-4 and then lost the last 6.
And that was like a high of like riding that high. I was like, God, doing TV for a team that's winning and they beat Green Bay and like, it was an adrenaline rush like no other. You're covering because you're breaking down the X's and O's, and the team was a lot of fun, and it's got an energy. And I don't know if I took it for granted because it was my first year. I'm like, this is just how it is maybe now. Like, we're going to be good. And then, the wheels kind of fell off the bus, and they've been borderline abysmal, unfortunately. And it's been some tough seasons. And I love that job. And I just kind of wonder what it would be like doing that job for a team that's contending for the playoffs in December.
One day.
I hope so.
I mean, we've been waiting long enough. Connor, you're the man. I'm glad you made it to Indy safe.
Me too, man.
I look forward to having you on at the the NFL tentpole events, Radio Row at the Super Bowl,
Thanks,
Radio
Jake.
Row here at the Combine. I know this is your Super Bowl, so enjoy it and appreciate you hopping on as always.
Always appreciate you having me. We always have some really good chats. I love your listeners. They're very, very gracious and kind to me, so I appreciate all the love. And before you know it, we'll be doing this again soon.
Can't wait. We will see Connor at the Badlands event. Jet fans, check it out. He's Connor Rogers. My name is Jake Asman. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon live from Indy for the rest of the week here at Radio Row.